welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. We're all familiar with the Vijay Mallya story, how the good times turned into bad times. But this week we shall be discussing the case against Vijay Mallya and also what next for this flashy defaulter, absconder, call him what you will. So today I have with me K Venu, founding editor of The Wire, Pranjal Sharma, consulting editor for Business World. I have Sandeep Bamzai, senior journalist, and Dilip Cherian, Image Group. Venu, can I begin with you? It seems as if Mallya is not, what next for Vijay Mallya? Is he do we call him a defaulter, absconder, and how do the banks get the money back? What next?
See, there's a criminal case launched against him, which has to do with money laundering. There are two separate cases. One has to do with the loans that his group companies, Kingfisher and others, had taken from the banks, for which he's been declared willful defaulter. There's a separate case which in my view is far more serious, which is of money that he has illegally taken out of the country, allegedly, which the CBI and enforcement are pursuing. So that makes the violations against him very serious. Also, other violations relating to his not having paid service tax and other taxes. So this is a bit like the Lalit Modi syndrome, because he is now out. Most of his assets are out. Today, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, I heard him say in one of the India Today conclaves that this is bad news for India's banking system. This is bad for India's private sector. I would add it's bad for India's governance also. The way he was allowed to leave. Correct. The CBI knew was informed that he was leaving. So now India can only depend on the extradition treaty with the UK to bring him back. And UK, by the way, they are very strict about the conditions on which they allow such extradition, because he is a tax resident, Mallya, in the UK. So they seek solid proof before they extradite somebody to be criminally tried in the country of whatever origin, which was the case with Lalit Modi also. And it's the case with Mallya too. Okay. And I learnt yesterday that last year the CBI was pursuing Mallya, and they also were planning to send a letter rogatory, which is to track the money, to find out where the money which has gone out has been deployed. But they didn't do it. So there will be a lot of legal complications. I don't think he's coming back soon.
Anytime soon. Yeah. Pranjal, UK's taxpayer Mallya versus India's defaulter Mallya. So who's going to win? Who's going to get him?
But I think the government can take very strong steps to make sure that even his position in UK becomes a bit untenable. You can, for example, cancel his passport. But the thing is that executive power on this is limited. Now, most of these cases are in the judicial ambit. Now, I think the problem and what has allowed Mallya to get away for such a long time is because our wheels of judiciary turn so slowly that by the time anybody can move, it's like a cat trying to catch a mouse in slow motion. The mouse can see it coming and it can just scurry away wherever you want. Whether the government wants to hold him or not, it's immaterial. I think that is where the case is. And the question you also asked about the money to the employees, that is also with the courts. About 300 to 400 crores are lying with the banks, with the courts, which Kingfisher has deposited under the various cases. That money is lying frozen with no value to anybody. The courts can take the decree that let us go and use this money for the employees at least. In my view, employees should get the first lien. Second is the banks, and we are all depositors of these public sector banks. It's also our money which has been lost.
So Sandeep, good times are continuing for Mallya while bad times continue for the Kingfisher employees.
Yeah, but how do you explain the CBI on October 16 issuing a lookout notice saying detain the man at the spot, right, and then changing that same thing on the 15th of November to inform? Now, even when he left on the 2nd of March, the CBI man at the airport informed CBI headquarters that this man is leaving the country. What do you do about it? In mid-December, he celebrated his 60th birthday at Grand Hyatt. He had 400 rooms booked at the resort. Enrique Iglesias performed, among other people. On the 6th of Feb, he attended the IPL auction, sporting a new mohawk haircut. On the 7th of Feb, he gave away the Great Indian Derby trophy at the Mahalakshmi racecourse. On the 1st of March, he attended Parliament. What are we talking about here? Then you allow him to go. So are you trying to tell me that a deal was not done? Here is a man who is walking in and out of the country. Here is a man, if you look, okay, let's go back in time, let's rewind. Let's look at the Veritas research report which came out on September 12, 2011, which is the most damning indictment of the way Mallya ran Kingfisher Airlines. It is not, you know, people don't understand, it is not just a loan that 17 banks have given Mallya. Those same banks were forced with a gun at the temple to convert that debt into equity and were then told to buy shares in Kingfisher at 61% premium on the prevailing market price, and they then ended up owning 23% of the equity in Kingfisher Airlines. Who authorized that? Who sanctioned the debt recast? So it's a double whammy. The bank is a lender, he's a creditor, and he's a shareholder. It is the most befuddling case that I have come across. And as history tells us, whether it is Pawan Sachdeva or Rita Singh or, you know, Mesco or XYZ, nothing will happen to this guy. Yeah?
Which is the saddest.
He's gone.
Dilip, you know, you're in the business of branding images and, you know, rebranding images. Is there any hope for Mallya or will he at least, you know, emerge from these embers, or is he already fine and doing okay?
You know, my view is that brand Mallya as it stood is demolished. There's no doubt that that is not going to fly like his airlines anymore. That's over. That's history. What he is now trying to do is convert himself into a victim. And I think that's not going to fly either. He may be, as Venu said, a taxpayer in the UK, but beyond the point, it's a very, it's as unnatural a fig leaf as his Speedo at the moment. You know, it's not going to cover very much. The sad thing is that here is a man who still has huge assets in terms of shareholding, and I think that there's no doubt that government has to find a way of making sure that at least the banks and the employees get repaid. The employees, of course, have been cribbing, but again, over there, as Pranjal said, there's money in the courts which ought to be
yes,
used
that's a very
disperse,
good point that Pranjal raised actually.
Disperse for them, and that's the end of that matter. You know, we need not get all emotional about it. This is an issue of banks, of governance, and both have failed, mega failed.
But here, you know, on Dilip's point on image, Dilip, what's going to happen, he's on several boards which you mentioned, he's going to be bumped off all those boards because no company wants him on the board. He is an untouchable right now for corporate India, and which is, I think, a huge blow to his ego. Somehow he'll have to stomach it, he doesn't have a choice, but that shows you what can lead you to, and I think it's a lesson for other business leaders in the country also, that if you think you can get away with somewhere, you are killing your own legacy. He's killing the legacy of what his father created. He's killed his own empire.
Has Mallya got away with it? That's a good question.
You know, being in UK, his bargaining power goes up tremendously. He cannot be brought back without, you know, in the UK, the way they look at law, procedures, it's completely different from the way we do in India. That's the reason why they couldn't get Lalit Modi back, and Lalit Modi was challenging Finance Minister Arun Jaitley on a daily basis on Twitter. Remember those days? Yeah. I challenge Arun Jaitley to send his men and try and summon me. I'll show him what it is to fight a case. Those guys are very confident there, because out there you have to show prima facie evidence to seek extradition. It ain't happening otherwise. So to that extent, Mallya is safe. And I'm told most of his assets are abroad. He's got assets in UK, Monte Carlo, South Africa, and what have you. Whatever you have here, maybe 20% of his assets, maybe he's already calculated that if you want to seize that, you can seize that. But I don't know what it amounts to.
The auction has taken place today.
And the auction did not get a response because the reserve price was very high.
There is no bidder. You know, at 150 crores, there was no
somebody
bidder.
said that 60 crore is a more realistic price. This
Why
is another problem with governments. They begin with a high reserve price, some bureaucrat to save his skin, but nobody's come for that. Having said that, there's one point which Mallya makes, to which I'm sympathetic.
Which?
He's saying that, okay, I owe 9,000 crore. What about the others who owe 50,000, 60,000, 1 lakh crore. There's a list of 10 big indebted groups, which is out in the open for many months. Credit Suisse, a research outfit, had put them out. All those loans, and some of them are more than 1 lakh crore, some of them are 70,000 crore. One Gujarat-based group very close to the Modi regime, more than 80,000 crore. Their loans have also been restructured. So is this government now looking at those? And they are also very close to willful default. By the way, the definition of willful default is ability to pay but not paying.
All right.
Now their loans have already been restructured once. Restructuring means extend and pretend. So you just extend the repayment.
But you know,
the Credit Suisse report says that 7.5 lakh crore is owed to banks, of which private credit rating agencies are saying that 50% are default status. Now, I think we are still hiding them, you know, we are in the hope that steel price will come up, as Jaitley says, GDP will grow, industry will recover, and therefore these loans will recover. Now, Uday Kotak says that you cannot wait for a recovery of business cycle for these NPAs to become good. So you better address these. I mean, they are not. They are 10 times more than Mallya. So I think I am sympathetic to that view of Mallya.
But you know, the point here is that those who have left the country, I think they're dead for the country for all practical purposes. So everybody who has gone cannot come back and hope to run a business anymore. So their business empires are dead, and as business leaders, they're dead. The smarter ones, like what Venu is referring to, those who stay in and still try to manipulate the system, have a better chance of continuing their empire by making sure that they keep rejigging their debt, you know, putting some of the debt, trying to sell it, getting some other investors to buy in. They have a better chance of survival. But the moot question is, why should public sector banks be ready to fund, support bad management? We don't have that law where bad management can be thrown out. We in India don't believe that a hostile takeover or a management which is terrible should be thrown out and let a better management take over. And that's our, you know, it's a sentimental philosophy also that, you know, they created the company, they should keep it. It's like their family business.
It's a bit like HUF thinking.
Exactly, but the family business is funded 90% by public money. So where is the private sector? I mean, I can technically ask that there is no private sector in the country because most of it is funded by public money.
Okay, Dilip, I want to bring in another thought that was going on just before Pranjal said this is, did Mallya not play it smartly? You know, Venu has also spoken about other defaulters, bigger defaulters, but because is Mallya fallen in his own trap of flamboyance?
I think,
and in your face spending?
I think everybody is quite sure that Mallya is clearly not the biggest defaulter in the country. One. Unlike what the finance minister said this morning about certain industries having a cyclical downturn and therefore requiring sectoral addressing, here is a person who took a bet on an airline and clearly took a wrong bet. Okay? And that is management error. And banks should have pulled the plug on him much earlier and recovered the money then. So there's no excuse to management failure. As far as scale is concerned and as far as flamboyance is concerned, it is flamboyance which is working against him today, and those who stay under the radar live to fight another day.
Banks were scared of Mallya, Priya, banks were scared of Mallya, and he referred to the same thing, Sandeep, that why should either they were scared or they thought he was too powerful for them to call him a willful defaulter. They could have done it much earlier.
I'm saying let's look at the bank chairman of the 17 banks when all this
restructuring,
jiggery pokery was going on.
And the officers in the ministry.
Who was the State Bank of India chairman? Who was the IDBI bank chairman? We know the names. Why aren't you calling them? Okay, Yogesh Agarwal is the only person who has been questioned. He was the IDBI bank chairman. He has actually sanctioned a loan before it goes to the ALCO. Every bank has an asset liability committee. He has sanctioned the loan on his own of 200 crores. So
why not? I would even name the finance minister, Priya. Why shouldn't the finance minister be also accountable?
Absolutely.
All the bank chairmen report to him at one way.
Exactly.
So where does the buck stop?
You know, I don't agree with Mr. Jaitley when he said in the morning that many of these defaults or loans are because of business cycle going down. Now, there's a very thin dividing line between genuine business cycle going down and people not being able to pay, and business cycle going down and yet people doing jiggery pokery, as he said. You know, so getting loans restructured, or taking the money, restructured money, and taking it out and putting it into some other project or some personal account. Because in Indian company account structuring, there's a lot of many levels of subsidiaries, companies which are not really seen by the auditors, or the stock exchange regulator. So this has been happening with everybody. This needs to be investigated actually. So to say that that much of it is because of business cycle going down is actually to be very soft on some of the big defaulters who actually 10% of our total credit is outstanding credit which our banking system has given out is about 70 lakh crore. Today 10% of that, Priya, as per government's own admission, Jayant Sinha recently said at a conference, are problem assets. So that means 10% is almost the entire banking capital getting wiped out. Normally 10% of the total lending is the banking capital.
Okay, one second, we need to take a quick break, but we're going to come back and talk more about Mallya and also where he went wrong, what was his Achilles heel and whether anybody on this table has any sympathy for him. Welcome back to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. So, Sandeep, we're talking about Vijay Mallya. I want to bring up one question on the table. What was his biggest mistake? Was it buying Kingfisher Airlines? Was it buying Air Deccan?
No, I would think that if you look at the way he ran his businesses, the way he consolidated his liquor business, the way he grew the Kingfisher brand, he did an outstanding job. Now, whether he did it all by himself or whether his wingman Ravi Nedungadi contributed is something that is a matter of conjecture. The fact is that when your ego enters a business equation, in this case, he wanted to be bigger than Naresh Goyal. He wanted to be better than Jet Airways. He wanted the flight to London and New York to serve the best food. He wanted the best livery, the best cutlery. I know this for a fact.
So was it the wrong business model?
Of course, it's not about the wrong business model.
There's also a very interesting anecdote on this. There was one of the air shows, and everybody on Malya's board, who included the chairman of Cathay Pacific, chairman of various things, told him, do not place orders this year. And he ordered 100 aircraft. And several very high profile people actually left the board as a result, saying if you don't listen to the board, why are we on it?
And this vanity showed itself in even, when you flew the airline, I'm sure all of us did, even in business class from Singapore to Delhi, his opening video would say, I have personally selected every cabin crew, girl and those who are there.
And
nobody says that.
But isn't it ironical that this same man, when he fled the country, flew on Jet Airways?
That's interesting.
It's the ego, his ego was gargantuan. That is the only word to describe it.
I think somewhere down the line, Sandeep, he may have been a good businessman to begin with, but his ego and his sense of himself
wrong business
went
to enter.
ahead of
Everybody
his
knows
business
it's
sense.
a mug's game. Everybody knows that, crude was over $100 at that point in time.
Later on to cry about crude
48% of your cost is crude, was crude at that point in time, and still is actually. So how do you run an airline? And you run an airline you were serving caviar in first class.
Yeah, actually he had taken his eyes off the costing completely. Because around the same time other guys came and they did well, like Indigo and others, they keep an
I can also tell you, Ravi Nedungadi constantly told him, don't overreach. Let's run the airline. Let's not overreach. Let's not do this. Let's not do this. Let's just run an airline.
Okay,
but also it's also equally true that he was so overconfident and his ego was fed by his power. Like he was playing the system. He knew he was on Parliamentary Standing Committee on Civil Aviation. A clear conflict of interest, right? During whatever the UPA regime. Now he also he got re-nominated with BJP support. The last one. Now, so he was in every party.
He cut across the political divide.
I mean, he had clout with every.
But look at corporate governance also, Priya.
So
he ran a listed company and said, on my 18th birthday of my son, I'm gifting the company to him. On what basis? The money is somebody else's.
Are you aware
How
that
can you gift it to your son?
He once called an EGM, an extraordinary general meeting, and appointed himself lifetime chairman of UB.
He called his own meeting.
He called his own meeting. He appointed himself as the lifetime chairman. It is the only instance in Indian corporate history where a businessman or an industrialist appointed himself lifetime chairman.
And Priya, to be fair, again, we should not blame Mallya alone for this. This overconfidence, which derives from playing the power game, is an affliction which all the other promoters whom I have, who are listed, they also suffer from.
It's all cronyism at the end of the day.
They're all confident that they'll somehow play the system and get their loans restructured and not pay, take it out of the country. This is happening across the board, and this government will have to deal with it. And this is what Raghuram Rajan said a year ago when he said, all these people practice risk-free capitalism. In good times, they have good times. In bad times, they have good times.
There is no bankruptcy code in this country. There is no Chapter 11. Companies drift from something called a debt recovery tribunal. Your debt is allowed to be evergreen. It is again a unique concept from practiced anywhere in the world. Your debt, your stressed assets are allowed to be evergreen. So for perpetuity, you are allowed to roll over your debt. Nobody asks questions. And it's happening even now, despite the so-called Mallya fiasco. There are companies who owe banks the whole.
But having said that, the problem is that with this Mallya fiasco and with what Sandeep mentioned about the bank chairman, you also have today in industry, and looking forward, that's going to be the issue. Nobody is willing to sanction any loan.
There is something called the SARFAESI Act, which is in place. The SARFAESI Act allows you to auction residential and commercial premises belonging to the defaulter. The law exists.
But do it.
Do it. The law exists.
Okay, last question, quick, yes or no. Does anybody over here have any sympathy for Vijay Mallya?
Well, I mean, I have no sympathy for him in terms of all the violations that he has committed. And I have no sympathy for him because I don't think he's suffering. He's having a good time in the UK. The point is, I have sympathy for the other stakeholders. I have sympathy for I have sympathy for Nedungadi. I have sympathy for the CFOs who work very hard. I have sympathy for the other employees who are still not
Any
getting
sympathy
paid.
for the banks?
And I have sympathy for the shareholders. I have sympathy for the banks because they are also now shareholders, as he said.
In the bad times. Pranjal?
I have sympathy for him because he's like the rat who got caught, while a lot of other bigger, fatter, more nastier rats are still roaming around, gobbling up public resources.
I agree with him. That is true. Absolutely.
That is true.
I've known him for 25 years. I still believe the best time to catch him was when he owed statutory dues. You cannot not pay service tax, TDS, employee state insurance, and a whole lot of other things which amounted to 425 crores, and he did not pay it for 3 running years. The law says that there should be a non-bailable warrant against that man. He played the system, he got away.
He played the system and the system played with him.
Yeah, and he got away.
I think anyone who plays at this high stakes with the system and is quite capable of staying where he is in the long run, sympathy would be an excessive word to use in terms of emotion.
That's well said. I'm sorry.
This country has sent media owners to jail for not depositing Provident Fund.
How did you allow him to get away with,
So if they wanted to, they could have got him a few years ago.
Of course.
That's it. They acted too late when it was.
Everybody has played along with him, whether it's the UPA or whether it's the NDA.
Everybody's in it together.
And these guys have allowed him to get away very clearly.
Okay, we're going to end now. It's already rained on Malya's parade, but before it rains on this discussion, we're going to end it. Thank you for watching this edition of Roundtable. We'll see you again same time next week.